Good morning and welcome to the Standing Committee's meeting for Wednesday, July 10th, 2024. All council meetings will be live streamed on the city's website. And for those joining us at the table, please do not turn your microphones off. Our first order of business is roll call. Will the clerk please take the roll?
Mr. Sharlin.
Here.
Mr. Coghill.
Here.
Ms. Gross.
Here.
Mr. Lavelle.
Here.
Mr. Mosley.
Here.
Mrs. Cal-Smith. Ms. Warwick. Mr. Wilson. Ms. Strasburger, Chair.
Here.
6 members present.
Thank you. Our next order of business is public comment. I would like to remind all speakers that the rules of council state that comments are limited to matters of concern, official action, or deliberation, which are or may be before City Council. Profanity will not be permitted. Please state your name and neighborhood for the record. You will have 3 minutes to speak. Our first registered speaker is Chief Pomaj Chakmam Yahalahi.
Ashwa Alif Kaim Ma'afaku. Greetings, light to everyone. My title is Pomaj Chakmam Yahalahi, which means I'm the living spirit of my greatest ancestors and their spiritual instrument. Chief of Medicine and Stewardship and Management with the Iroquois Confederacy of Aboriginal American People. Chief of my ancestral bloodline lineage, the Tuscarora Nation State. The Onkwe Onwe Bakako Utsil Ushbu, which means the original beings, first in the earth to bring good and abundance. Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 of the United States Constitution, and excluding Indians not passed. With the utmost respect, you all took an oath of office to the United States Constitution. Well, let's start in 1924. The racial change created unlawfully by Walter Ashby Fletcher, a staunch eugenics proponent, and first registrar and Vital Statistics of Virginia, reclassifying our people from Indian to color, and later all non-reservation Indians to Negro. Both later repealed as unlawful, not before causing immeasurable harm to our people. Now many of our people are suffering from an identity crisis. I and many others are not. We have always known we are here, and we're always here, and we're still here. The sun is the best disinfectant. To end the profits of treaty rights, constitutional rights of our people. Colonization is in full effect under the guise of commerce and capitalism, while destroying our land, airs, and waterways. Energy is naturally created in the atmosphere and the universe of the Gaia, our planet, and these forms of energy is absolutely abundant on our lands, airs, and waters given to our people as our inheritance. In the Constitution of the United States, Article 6, all debts contracted and engagements entered into before the adoption of this Constitution shall be as valid against the United States under this Constitution as the Confederation. This Constitution and the laws of the United States which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land. And the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. And the senators and representatives before mentioned and the members of the several state legislatures and all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and of the several states, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution, but not religious tests shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. And so therefore, your oath of office is in question if you do not honor our indigenous rights, our treaty rights, the treaty with the Delaware, of which my ancestral nation is a member. I yield.
Thank you very much. Our next registered speaker is Ajal Jaib Chenalkain.
Enlighten Alakin, that's proto-mine for the light of me, honors the light of you. Greetings. I am an Aborigine American matriarch, and my title is Yahalahi Chanal Ka'in, located in the Delaware Territory, as you all will call so-called Pixboy. My people are the original beings, the original stewards, the original inhabitants of our ancestral lands, the Americas, including the islands, the Onwe from our great law of peace. So my statements today will reflect invoking my people's story, our perspective, our constitutional indigenous rights, Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3, and excluding Indians not taxed. The etymology of taxed, a noun, we are not to be estimated. We are not to be evaluated, assessed, handled, touched, to burden, impose a tax, censure, charged, put a strain on, to enter on a list, or enrolled. We are not to be any of these nefarious actions. And the Bouffiers Dictionary states, Indians, the Aborigines of this country, are so called. My people are acknowledged in multiple maxims of law and lawful documents, such as the Constitution of the United States of America, Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3, and excluding Indians not taxed, the Delaware Treaty, the Northwest Ordinance, the American Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, House Congress Resolution 331, whereas my people are acknowledged to the development of the United States Constitution and to reaffirm the continuing government-to-government relationship with my people, 100th Congress Second Session, and the list continues. We are not to be confused with Title 25 Native Americans. Who are also within the box of persons, immigrants, foreigners, citizens, naturalized citizens, non-citizens, residents, humans, individuals, all under the jurisdiction of the United States, which is a corporation, aka a business. My people, the Aborigine Americans, have been reclassified as so-called Indians, so-called colored, so-called Negro, so-called Black. We are not socio-political constructs, and we will no longer stand for continuously being discriminated against, conspired against my people's constitutional indigenous rights. Thomasina V.O. Jordan case, Walter Ashby Plecker justified with the state encouraging them to reclassify non-reservation Indians to Negroes, which has since been repealed as unlawful. All municipal offices, citizens, immigrants, and all other foreigners are obligated to uphold their oath to the Constitution, Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3, excluding Indians not taxed. My people are not your abusers. Are you those who are on city council, including the colonizers, the agentists, the votes, the Slavs, the foreigners, going to honor your oath and the oath of your immigrant ancestors' oath to the Constitution, Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3, excluding Indians not taxed, to unlawfully enforce ill-conceived policies and codes against my people's right to our...
Thank you very much. Our last registered speaker is Kenneth Ford. Is Kenneth Ford present? Seeing no further registered speakers, we will now take comment from those in the audience wishing to speak. Are there any speakers wishing to come to the podium?
Good morning. My name is Yvonne F. Brown. I live at 715 Mercer Street. That's in K.D. Irvis Tires up on Bedford Avenue. Yesterday I came down, I was saying it was my son's birthday. He would have been 57. But also, on his birthday 5 years ago, my granddaughter had a little baby. My son was very dark in complexion. This little baby was dark like him, a little bit of hair. But she's a feisty one, too. She has the bigger sister that's 6 that she just runs and beats up on. We try to stop her, but it's just her. Now we have another little baby, and she just turned 3, who beats her up, and she's saying, "Stop, baby, stop." I wish you had seen him yesterday, because yesterday we took him to, up in Troy Hill, there's a little spray park. Well, I took him because I'm driving, but otherwise I don't think I would have went. It's awfully hot. I've gotten so that this heat is something, and it is for a lot of other people. But the reason why I want to explain to the citizens, when you come down and you get a proclamation, I had told some of the other people, I said, if you get a proclamation, you're coming down with the person to get a proclamation, but you can also speak. I told quite a few of them that they need to come up. I said, all you have to do is say your name. I don't know what to say. I said, just say your name. And the last thing before you walk out the room, say, we're watching you, because they don't want to be watched. I see it because you don't tell us when you're going to you change your meeting. I want to explain to you that I know the law. Your rules say Tuesday and Wednesday. Dr. Miller also knows it's Tuesday and Wednesday. When you have a holiday, you may change it to where it's any day you want to, and it shouldn't be. You should follow your rules Tuesday and Wednesday. I came last week on Wednesday, Jens had it Monday, both of the meetings. Please, you need to tell us when you're going to change the meetings. Even though you change it like you want, please tell us. Because I put my life is around on Tuesday and Wednesday. Don't ask me to do anything because I'm coming down here. But if you change it, then I come and you're still doing your own thing. And Mr. Mosley, I remember I had told him, when he took, and it was a Wednesday, we were supposed to speak first, and he had proclamation. And I was really upset with him. And I said, you of all people, you know how they did you when you was up at that hotel where they almost beat you up, you and your white wife. I was saying, you ask them, thank you for letting us. Why don't you ask us? We're the people sitting here. We sit here for hours. You know hours. I leave after I speak because it's a rhetoric, same thing over and over again.
Thank you very much. Are there any further speakers? Any further speakers? There being no further speakers, that moves us on to our standing committee's agenda. Our first committee is the Finance and Law Committee, chaired by myself.
Deferred paper, Bill 89, Resolution amending Resolution 909 of 2023, entitled Resolution Authorizing a Fee Schedule for 2024 pursuant to Chapter 170 of the City Code to reduce the cost of employee parking.
Motion to hold 1 week.
Second.
Discussion? I'll just say that the councilwoman and I have been working, had a meeting last week, with OMB, with Patrick Cornell, and there is a new bill that is ready to go. It was not introduced yesterday, but is planning to be introduced next week and rule aided. So I know it was the councilwoman's desire to hold this bill, table this bill at the same time that we will be then considering the new bill to replace this. So that is why we're holding it for 1 more week, even though the other bill is essentially ready to go. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of a 1 week hold, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Bill will be held for 1 week. That moves us on to new papers.
Bill 641, Resolution authorizing the issuance of a warrant in favor of James Sheets and his attorney, Epesos Law, LLC, for a single payment in 2024 in an amount not to exceed $10,000 in full and final settlement of litigation filed in the Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 641, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation. Bill 642.
Bill 642, Resolution authorizing interdepartmental transfers in the amount of $1,479,512.47 from the Department of Human Resources and Civil Service to the Department of Public Safety, Bureau of Administration, the Department of Public Works, Bureau of Operations, and Bureau of Facilities, and the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure. These budget-neutral transfers are necessary to properly align funding associated with Pittsburgh Joint Collective Bargaining Committee contract ratification.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? I have been briefed by OMB, but I do think it would be worthwhile for everyone to hear. I know we have Lene Lincoln here. Would you like to join us and answer any questions about this?
Hi, Lene Lincoln, Assistant Director for the Operating Budget and Special Revenue.
Thank you. If you wouldn't mind just sharing with the other council members what you shared with me prior to this coming up today.
Sure, so this transfer moves money that we had basically earmarked in HR's budget lines for all of the 3 bargaining units that we're currently in negotiations with during the 2024 budget creation process. So unlike fire, where we had to do a full budget amendment because of the Act 111 provisions, at least that's OMB's belief, because these are not, because you don't have to approve the number of positions separately and the specific wages separately, we can do these transfers to correctly allocate the funds to the different departments as needed without doing a full budget amendment. And this is just the breakdown of those wages by department, some of the allocations that were also given through those negotiation sessions. It came in under the allocated amount for the current year, so we essentially planned appropriately based on the number of employees in each of the groups, and we stayed within the confines of what we had allocated for each year moving forward, and for this year for each of the groups. We are still in negotiations with EMS and their bargaining unit. That looks like we would still have plenty of room there also.
Thank you. And so this is budget neutral.
This is budget neutral, yes.
Thank you. Okay, any further discussion? Councilman Wilson.
Yeah, so this is money coming from HR, right?
It was set aside in HR because they are majority salary and benefit expense, so that's where we budgeted them for. And then they're moved to the appropriate department salary and benefit lines based on the,
What's the total amount that's still in that account?
I think it was roughly $520,000.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
All right, thanks.
Any further discussion? Councilman Charlin.
So we don't have to reopen the budget to, ratify the PJCBC contract.
No, that is my
Okay.
understanding. We do not have a full, everything has been tentatively agreed to, TA'd. We do not have a full signed copy of the document yet. When we do, we will make sure that your office gets one.
But with that, the spending plan for this year is now not up to date with the spending plan that we passed at the end of the year is now not up to date with what we're actually paying people.
As soon as these transfers go through and we move them through the controller's office, it will be fully up to date, yes.
But the budget that we passed doesn't reflect that. So now we're saying, but what I'm saying is that forklift operator, or pick a title in Public Works, that person, we have allotted that they will be paid this amount, and now we're paying them an amount that's more than that because of the PJCBC contract.
Correct, whatever positions are listed in that.
So the budget is not compliant with what we're actually spending, correct?
Councilman, if I may.
Yeah.
Jake Pollack, Director of the Office of Management and Budget. Collective bargaining agreements supersede the allocations, the direct lines in the budget. So while you're correct that the individual rates that would have appeared in the budget as it was passed last year would now change to reflect the outcomes of the bargaining agreements. And that's consistent with state laws governing our collective bargaining obligations. The funds, the contingency fund within the HR budget where we budgeted for the outcomes
that
of
was
the
a line item, yeah.
negotiations. Yes, there was a line item in the HR budget. It was a salary coded line item. So
Right.
in the aggregate, the amount of salary expense that was part of the spending plan does not change here. The funds earmarked for salaries, they're moving from the HR budget where they were in a contingency fund to the budgets of the individual departments that employ PJCBC employees. So it is both neutral in terms of the general fund overall and the distribution of general fund expenditures to salaries versus other types of expenses. The one thing that would change is the rate table, but it is not necessary to amend the budget to reflect that because of a collective bargaining agreement. If we were to have, if we were making these changes outside of a collective bargaining agreement, or if we were, if the result of the negotiation resulted in an expenditure greater than the total expenditure incorporated in the budget, a reopener would have been necessary.
I guess, so I get, at this point, my question is maybe not as legal as what is a good practice, but wouldn't it be more proper to reopen the budget and have a budget that is reflective of the current salary positions? Wouldn't that be more proper and transparent?
It's significantly longer and more cumbersome process and not necessary either from a legal or accounting perspective. So we would not agree with that position. I understand what you're saying, but from our point of view, transferring the funds to the appropriate accounts is consistent with the best way to manage these types of changes that result from a collective bargaining negotiation.
And why do we have to do that for Act 111 bargaining units?
It's a requirement. It's included in Act 111, essentially, that there are separate provisions and items included in the budget itself that need to be updated there, as well as
Such as what?
the table that lists the number of officers and the cost associated with that. That's true of police, at least.
But isn't that also true of PJCBC?
No. It appears two places in the budget as it relates to police, in the budget resolution itself and then in the budget book. That's not true of PJCBC. There are numerous provisions that are unique to Act 111 unions, which for us are police and fire. That's also why council has a ratification vote on the agreed to contract itself, which is not true of any other collective bargaining units except those two. So the state requirements that are in Act 111, again, supersede our local laws. Per code, we wouldn't have to do any of those things even for those two units, except that the state law supersedes them.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilperson Warwick.
It's just with regard to Councilman Charlotte's questioning, would it be possible, I mean, just for the sake of the public for the next 6 months, because I know like online you can, download the budget, would it be possible to put just like an additional document that just says these are the updated I don't know. I mean, if someone was going to
The changes will be
look.
reflected in the quarterly reports.
Okay. I just mean if someone's looking up, like say someone's like, oh, I wonder, how much does how much does this position make? And they can just find it easily.
I think we could probably do something to that effect, yeah. Like a note in where the budget reports are showing the change. That would be easy.
Yeah, just so that you can, I mean, I don't know if there's other, did the police salary, was that this year? No, that was last year.
In those instances, because the two most recent union contracts that have been finalized, police and fire, both had full budget amendments because of the Act 111 procedures we were discussing. So the budget document, the amended 2024 budget document that appears already incorporates all of those changes. But so to your point, we could add a addendum note of a file that lists these adjustments.
It just says for the last 6 months of 2024.
Yeah,
or whatever,
that's
whenever those
possible.
salaries go into effect. I don't know. Just a thought.
Thank you. Councilman Coghill.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Renee, you mentioned EMS has not settled their contract, which we know, yeah. My question is, I guess, is there monies set aside in this same fund for anticipation of what that contract is?
Yes.
Okay. Can you give me that dollar amount, or how much?
I can get back to you with that.
Okay.
I recall off the top of my head.
Right. And this money that we're transferring is in no way cutting into that money set aside?
Correct.
Good. Okay, that was my only concern. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further discussion first round? Second round? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 642, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation. Thank you very much. That moves us on to invoices. Do I have a motion for invoices?
Motion to approve. Second.
Discussion? I have a few notes on invoices. Apologies, I have a note on P card, but not on invoices. Any discussion on invoices? Seeing none, all those in favor of invoices, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Invoices are approved. That moves us on to P cards. It moves us on to, yes, P cards. Do we have a motion for P cards?
Move.
Second.
Discussion? The notes I have for P cards are as follows. There are a few PayPal invoices. There are 4 invoices from Domi for WTS Pittsburgh for a workshop. And we do have invoices for separate Domi employees. And we have receipts for those, or rather invoices for those. A second one is Commission on Human Relations did pay an invoice to B. Marshall for a vendor plaza fee for tabling at the Juneteenth events from the June 14th through 16th. It is typical for the Commission on Human Relations to, when they're tabling, to pay to have a table. So this is separate from everything we discussed regarding Juneteenth. This is strictly Commission on Human Relations getting a table. There is another PayPal charge on the P card report for parks. This is credit for Youth Canvas craft shoes for a citywide community recreation city camp field trip to the Marshall Building. And since there's a refund, there's not a corresponding invoice, but we can access that if anyone would like that. Any further discussions on invoices? Councilperson Warwick.
I was just gonna say, my kids did those shoes and they were a big hit.
I think that can be considered a voice amendment for an invoice, right? Any further discussion on P cards? Seeing none, all those in favor of P cards, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
No.
1 no. P cards are approved. That moves us on to Public Safety and Wellness Committee chaired by Councilman Coghill.
Bill 632, resolution amending Resolution 544 of 2022, which authorized the mayor and the director of the Department of Public Safety to enter into an agreement or agreements with the Pittsburgh Downtown Partnership for services rendered by Clean Team ambassadors within the Southside Parking Enhancement District by increasing the total not to exceed amount by $300,000 for a total not to exceed amount of $675,000 over 3 years.
Motion to approve, brief discussion.
Second.
I don't really have anything. I just wanted to open it up. I thought somebody may.
Councilman Charlin.
Did I just step in front of you? I thought you were about to say something.
I just seconded it.
Okay. No, I think Charles and Director Schmidt are here to talk briefly about this. If you guys want to come to the table, but ultimately, I just want to say that the work that we've done with the Southside Enhancement District has been fantastic. This has been really a godsend for us, and something we hear from Public Works consistently about the help that they're able to provide here. As I understand this correctly, this is just continuing the contract that currently is under place, and I believe increasing the amount because the cost of the sweepings have gone up. They're union employees, and their contract has increased. Is that correct? Did I sum that up well?
Yes, the contract has increased as well as, this contract was renewed shortly post-COVID. So the services that were being provided at the time have also increased. So this is both of those things, that the union contract and their wages have increased because of their negotiations, as well as they have provided some increased services prior to what they did before. And then for 2025, we originally were unsure of the PED's solvency at the time because of the income changes with parking. But now that funding is back up and solvent again, we are adding the funding in there for 2025.
So, for everyone else to know, we sometimes have two people cleaning the street, specifically during winter months. We bump it up to 3. There's a period we usually do 2.5 to have more people on the street, especially in the summer. We remove roughly 1 ton of trash every 2 weeks off the street here. So it is a large amount of trash that we're able to take away. And parking revenue has really stayed high. So we've been able to manage that pretty well. Again, we're paying for this program from people that are visiting, the South Side and not paying for it from people that live in the South Side, we're able to use the customers to clean up the trash there, and it's been an incredibly effective program. I've got a couple ideas on what we can do going forward with it that I will be talking with you about in the future, but just want to thank you for your work here.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 632, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
That moves us on to Public Works and Infrastructure Committee, chaired by Councilperson Warwick.
Bill 680, resolution providing for a reimbursement agreement or agreements with the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation for costs associated with the Rays Hill District project and providing for the payment of the cost thereof not to exceed $14,150,000, reimbursable at 80%, and a municipal share of Commonwealth incurred costs not to exceed $93,000.
Motion to approve, brief discussion.
Second.
Just with regard to waiving Rule 8, it's just to get started as soon as possible so that everything can get under contract by 2026.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 680, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation. Bill 681.
Bill 681, resolution authorizing the issuance of a warrant payable in favor of the Chartiers Valley District Flood Control Authority to renew the City of Pittsburgh's membership into the CVDFCA and pay fees for the year 2024 in an amount not to exceed $17,204.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Again, brief discussion, just on the Rule 8 is that the deadline to reapply is July 19th, which is why we did Rule 8.
Any further discussion? Councilman Coghill.
Yes, thank you. So it's $17,000. That's a membership fee? Do we have anybody? Anybody here?
Director Hornstein looks like he's...
Okay, good.
Chris Hornstein, Director of Public Works.
Thank you, Director. So this is a fee to be part of a flood study group? Do you know?
Yeah, so the Flood Control Authority was enacted through congressional legislation in the 60s for Chartiers Creek. The Flood Control Authority is responsible for maintaining the flood control devices that were installed at that time. So our membership fee, if you will, actually goes towards like the ongoing maintenance of those things. So it keeps our neighboring impacts to the city. Those would be the neighborhoods of like East Carnegie, Oakwood, Ferrywood, Esplin.
Yeah, don't question it. It's understood.
Well, when he said Chartiers Creek, I thought, uh-oh.
So it keeps and there's numerous, there's like 12 municipalities that are involved in this authority that all contribute.
Is that annually? $17,000
Yes, that's $17,000 annually.
That doesn't include any work. That doesn't include
No, that includes like everybody chips in and that pays for the ongoing maintenance and the study.
Okay, they dredge it, whatever they have to do.
Yes,
okay. All right,
repair
I
the
understand.
banks, that sort of thing.
I'm not going to get in trouble with her. I'm done, all right?
I'm gonna go crazy today.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 681, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation. Thank you, Director. That moves us on to new papers. Bill 645.
Bill 645, resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure on behalf of the city of Pittsburgh to enter into an agreement or agreements with CDR McGuire, Inc. for project design management services and reviews in connection with various City of Pittsburgh construction projects for a total not to exceed $2,798,469.70, reimbursable at various rates depending on the project.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion?
Yes. Director Lucas, are you here to talk about this? Curious what we're doing here.
Good morning. Kim Lucas, Director for the City of Pittsburgh's Department of Mobility and Infrastructure.
So yes, due to our staffing levels, the Federal Highway Administration has authorized the city to hire outside help to support the state and federal oversight projects. As you know, when we receive money from the federal government, we work with PennDOT to make sure that we're in compliance with all of those rules and requirements, and for that we hire CDR McGuire to provide project management support. And we are able to pay them from those federal grants at the reimbursement rate that the federal grant is set at. So for some projects, that's where 80% of the project costs are paid for by the federal grant, and we pay a portion of the remainder. For other projects, like some of our bridge projects, it's 100% fully funded with non-city dollars.
So what are we getting from this $3 million?
We get project management support. So we have CDR McGuire that follows our timelines, makes sure that we are submitting the right documents at the right time. They're able to provide support for actual technical analysis of some of our design work. And so they offer not only, like I was saying, the technical support, but also keeping track of our projects and coordinating with PennDOT and in some cases the federal government to make sure that we're doing everything we need to from an administrative standpoint.
So is this something we don't have the capacity to do internally?
Correct.
Okay. It's a good bit of money, and is it a year contract? Is it?
That is a great question. I might have to get back to you on that one.
Yeah.
This is not our first agreement with them. We've been working with them for a number of years, and in some instances, we've got embedded consultants that are actually managing our projects on day-to-day that sit on the third floor, and they're providing all of that project management, sometimes for our STEPS projects, sometimes for our landslide projects, and this is for all of our federal projects. So it is a big chunk of change, but when you look at the cost of some of those federal projects, for example, $55 million is one bridge, that's actually a limited amount, and most of that is paid for at different reimbursable rates, so it's not the full amount that the city would have to enter into, I believe.
Do you know, so of this, and I think the councilman just handed this to me and I didn't have a second to review it, how much money in federal, how much federal money are we receiving that we're having managed by this $3 million?
That is a question I would want to check back on. I know right now
Can you ballpark it?
DOMI's overall capital budget right now, in terms of projects that we have funding identified for, is around $250 million. And the majority of that is non-city dollars, because we have, depending on the year, a return rate for every city dollar. There's $1.40 in external funding. And so hundreds of millions of dollars worth of work, with a lot of that being federally funded or state funded.
And I'm going to preempt my colleague here because I think she's about to ask this. Did we go out to bid for CDR McGuire, or was there an RFP?
That's a great question. I believe we would have had to, because I believe we would have had an RFP. I need to double check on if this is a extension of a current contract. I believe it is. But because of the dollar figure, we're not able to use an ITQ, for example.
Okay. Yeah. It is and I guess the other thing there is, if we didn't have this, would we not be able to manage those federal projects? Would we lose federal money because of that?
At this point, it would put us in jeopardy of being in compliance with our federally funded projects.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councilwoman Cale Smith.
Thank you. I'm going to abstain today because I do want to know that there was an RFP, why there was an extension. If the RFP was for the initial contract, I would like to know about that. But I do want to say that I saw that there's 2 projects on McGardle there and one on East Sycamore in my district. But one of the things, every year I put money in for McGardle. Almost every year there's money in the budget for McGardle, and it still sits there. What is the plan for McGardle roadway?
I'll have to check with the team and follow up with you on that.
Yeah, but there's lots of money in for McGardle, and that's what I want to know what the projects are for McGardle. Thank you. because there's different portions of McArdle. So, thank you. I'm excited. I mean, I want it done, so I'm excited that it's getting done. I just want to make sure I can relay this and communicate this to the residents effectively. I don't want them to think McArdle, one portion's being done and then nothing happens there again. So, thank you. Thank you.
Councilwoman Gross.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am supportive of these very, very many projects, especially because it leverages the federal money from either 80% to sometimes 100% of the project, right? So we have to actually do the projects in order to pull down the federal funds. And we have collapsing infrastructure. And infrastructure we don't want to collapse, right? I see Bloomfield Bridge here, and the last time Jeremy was at the table, I was like, there's nothing wrong with Bloomfield Bridge, right? Right. We're doing the maintenance so that nothing becomes wrong with Bloomfield Bridge. But I do think that the questions here at the table get to a larger point, which some of the members I've served with for a long time have we've had these discussions and I've said these things before, but our job, I think, here at this table is to weigh how much we need in our organizational chart to budget for in terms of capacity, right? Versus when we see outsourcing at this level, it's because things have changed, right? So we weren't doing this infrastructure work 5 or 10 years ago. And so we didn't need as much, maybe we should have been, but we didn't have it in our organizational chart. I'm going to remind Councilwoman Kale-Smith of the budget season when Finance Chair Natalia Rudiak suggested that we needed a hydrologist because of landslides. And I think maybe you and I voted for it, and it didn't make it into the budget. And so we don't have...
That's because 5 members of council don't realize that they control the budget.
And so we didn't get that passed that year. And so we haven't been managing and had a full-time employee with the skill sets of a soil engineer or a hydrologist, which is one of the functions, not all the functions, but one of the functions C.D. McGuire, I think, does, as well as some other firms, that we continue to outsource them. And so at some point, we really have to weigh the cost-benefit analysis. I believe that in many different functions of the city organizational chart, we are outsourcing too much, not just in DOMI, but also in DPW and in other functions. And during austerity 20 years ago, that was the only way we could do it because we had fired 2/3 of the city organizational chart. But now that especially when we're ramping up massive public works like these bridges and these long-standing capital projects that have been waiting to get done, we lived through this at PWSA when I was on the board, right? At some point, you cross a threshold where you're spending too much money on subcontractors because you've just ramped up, for example, lead water service line from being basically almost zero to having to do the whole city. And so that's, I think, a discussion that will be in front of us as we enter the budget season. So I don't know if you want to respond to that, Director.
Well, I just wanted to add, I'm getting some information. Sorry, some of the team that would normally be here who works more closely on this are dealing with court right now for one of the bridge projects. So this was a new RFP that was issued this year. So this was a completely competitive procurement this year. So the figure you see here, the 2.8 million, the vast majority, at least 80% of that will be charged back to the federal and state projects. So what the city's share will be 20% of that total figure or less, because some of those projects, the reimbursement rate is 100%. This is a conversation we've had internally to the department, where to grow and how to grow. I'm a strong advocate for having very strong fiscal and contracting and administrative abilities within the department. In some cases, though, like this, for right now, where we can get reimbursed by the federal government for 80 to 100% of the cost of that support, then there is merit to still doing this so that we can save those city operating budget funded positions for positions that we could not get that federal recoupment rate for. It may not be common knowledge, but there are a number of our project managers that do charge their own time, their salary time, to those federal projects that they're working on. and in anticipation of growth in those types of projects, in I think 2026, 2027, we have a double-digit, I believe, number of bridge construction projects that are going to be underway. We are going to need to figure out how to continue to grow that capacity to manage that, and this is one of our tools. But absolutely, when we can, we like to see city employees for the longevity of it, for the institutional knowledge that we can grow, for providing great jobs, and those reasons.
I'm going to just say I don't believe it's only just because it's nice. We have, I think we can prevent problems by having full-time staff internal, especially when they're very, very multi-million-dollar problems that involve really public health and safety. But we're on the same page with it's really important to have those capacities in-house sometimes. Even at the level of program management, I just heard you say that you're billing it, which is appropriate and legal to do, and also helps the operating budget. But we had to grow the capacity of program managers, right? I mean, Domi started off with 2 employees, and we couldn't have even contracted these projects until we added those program managers, et cetera, et cetera. So we really have to look and see kind of if we're not shooting ourselves in the foot, so to speak, just to say colloquially, by not having the internal capacity for some of these positions. So that's all I have, Madam Chair. I appreciate it.
Apologies, I was sidebarring.
That's all I
you
have.
had your
Thank
questions
you.
answered? Thank you. Councilman Coghill.
Thank you,
First
Madam
round.
Chair. Thank you. First, I want to say I agree with Councilwoman Gross. Anything that we can do in-house, we want to do in-house because it's easy to sub things out, but it's expensive. Okay, we see it right in front of us here today. But going back to the amount, you said you had gotten information while we were here saying that of this $2,798,000 that we would only be paying approximately 20%. So we're looking at like $500,000 really, right?
That sounds right.
Okay, good. Well, that's a big difference. For me, it's a big difference, right? I thought, reading it looks like we're paying out $2.7 million. Not to say it wouldn't be worth it now. So this company, what they do is really help walk us through, keep track of federal grants.
Yes, and helping perform some of that oversight and compliance work for us.
Yeah, they don't have people working here in this building, right?
Not for this contract,
Right.
perhaps, but we do have people working in this building that we have contracted out
That
for.
we bill them for.
No.
Or we get reimbursed for.
If they're working on state and federal projects, we can get reimbursed for that support, yes.
Got it. Okay, and it sounds to me like you feel like this is helpful in just keeping it organized, helping through the process, all of that.
Absolutely.
It's a lot of money, but when we knock it from $3 million to $500,000, so I won't have a problem with that, knowing that. So, okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any further for first round? Councilman Mosley.
Director Lucas, if you could just speak to just really for the public and for my curiosity, speak to some specific, federal projects, that are underway, just to give folks some context of, what this, particular allocation, would help support.
Sure. So if you think about our major bridge projects like the Charles Anderson Bridge, Swinburne Bridge, anything that the public sees that's a major capital project like that, most likely it's federally funded or supported in some way. So pretty much anything that's not just a basic maintenance example. There are some federally funded projects that are like trail construction or state funded or even more locally funded, but still external to city dollars that we're able to use. I'm drawing a blank because I'm sitting at the table on TV to go through the Rolodex, but if anybody wants to take a look online and you check out Engage PGH, you can see a map of where these projects are located. We also have millions of dollars in traffic signal improvements. You've seen that when we can improve a traffic signal, intersection safety improves by 33% reduction in crashes. And so we have somewhere between $25 and $50 million worth of state and I believe federally funded signal improvements. Mount Washington, the stabilization of Mount Washington is funded through the federal emergency, FEMA and PEMA. And so that's another $25 million or so to stabilize that slope. So we have a mix of projects, traffic signals, bridges, major landslides that people will know.
Thank you, Director Lucas. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any further for first round? Second round, Councilwoman Kale Smith.
I'm going to let it go. I just felt like I had to respond to Councilwoman Gross's comments, but I want to say that I'm appreciative of the work being done, but I will say that priorities and grants and all those things didn't just happen overnight. And so that there's been a long process when getting some of the things and infrastructure completed. And before that, it was parks and pools and all sorts of other issues too that every mayor, every administration has to face challenges, and what their priorities are at that time are usually determined by what's important to the residents. So, with that said, also that our budget director sent us a text, so thank you, Pete, that this was under a PennDOT. Let me see if I can find it. It was a bid through PennDOT's bidding process, since it's all TIP projects. So I just want to make sure that people know that there was an RFP, and I feel comfortable with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion for second round? Councilman Coghill.
Yeah, no, I really just wanted to take the opportunity while you're in front of me to say you did a really good job in Beachview. You know, Panini, Thomas, we had to change that whole thing up because the community decided they didn't want our original plan, and the improvements that they did, the company that was there, I can't remember the name of the company, but you know, there's growing pains with it still, of course. I still get phone calls, but for the most part, it's so much more aesthetically pleasing. And your team was excellent through it. And now we're working in Carrick to do the same thing. So couldn't be happier with the work that your department has done for me in those two areas. So thanks.
Thank you.
Yep.
Be sure to share that with them.
Can I just echo that? I do want to thank Domi for all the work they do, because I feel like you're in a no-win situation. No matter what you do, somebody's going to be angry, but thank you for the work you try to do for the city.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
If I can add one more compliment, your team, the teardrop garden that they put in the Southside Slopes. We had the Slopes picnic last night. Everyone was ranting and raving about it. They did a fantastic job with that. It looks really, really great. So thank you.
Thanks. Any further
Please pass
discussion?
that along.
I will. Okay. Well, I'll just say for my part, I know that there are capital budget update, kind of quarterly updates that are given, where Domi presents, where Chip Gall for our facilities presents. For some reason, I believe it's just the Finance and Law Committee chair who's invited to that from council, and perhaps all council members should be invited to that, because that is a really interesting way for us for me, in my office, to understand exactly what, with photos, with updates, what's happening, in addition to looking at the Engage PGH map, and to see where the update is, you know, project by project, to actually get a presentation. So just an idea there that we can put out there and follow up with offline. Yes, Councilwoman Kale
I
Smith.
just want to add that years ago we had, and I talked to Director McDevitt about this before, we had every department came and met with the council person that chaired the committee. They told us their request, and we worked with council members to get to those things. So I wish we'd go back to some part of that where we at least, and all members could, you know, you can't have, you know, 5 of us in a meeting, but they would schedule if there was an interest, so that we could sit back and work with the directors and their team, so we understood what the priorities should be for the budget. So thank you.
So we can follow up on that. Second thought is, as we discuss outsourcing versus handling in-house, we are entering a couple of years of austerity, and personnel is by far our largest expense. So I'll just leave that there. Okay. All those in favor of Bill 645, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Affirmative recommendation. Thank you very much. Bill 646.
Bill 646, resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of the Department of Public Works to enter into an agreement or agreements with the Pittsburgh Parks Conservancy for the administration of certain 2024 parks tax-funded projects and programs, and providing for the payment of the cost not to exceed $640,000.
Motion to approve, brief discussion.
Second.
Yes.
Discussion?
Yeah, so this is Parks Conservancy working on the Frick Park Sensory Classroom, the McKinley Park Grove, Community Grove, and Valley Refuge Shelter. I'm not sure where that one is.
Review Park.
Riverview.
Oh, Riverview. Okay. That's all. If anyone else.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councilwoman Cale Smith.
Yeah, I would like to have further discussion with the Pittsburgh Parks and with the Parks Tax Fund. I think that I'd like to see, some of the things I've saw them recommending weren't necessarily, across the city. There was no diversity in terms of geographic diversity. So I'd like to see where they're working, where they're planning on working, and I don't know how you can not include a place like Sheridan and the Sheridan Park Master Plan and have all these other, small projects across the city. So I'd like to have a conversation about that, and I will talk to Pittsburgh Parks about it, but if need be, I'll call for a public hearing in my district. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll note that these projects were 3 of the 4 projects that were approved as part of the 2024 budget.
Yeah, I'm actually glad they're
I'm
being
not
done.
responding even
Yeah.
to you. I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that. Yeah.
And I'm just saying, I'm glad that they are being done, and I'm glad everybody's getting things done. I just want to know what their priorities are, because, previously, with the previous administration, it was all about West End and Sheridan and Mount Washington with Emerald View. And then now I'm looking at some of the priorities that they sent in an email, and it didn't include any of those. So thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 646, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation, Bill 647.
Bill 647, resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of the Department of Public Works and/or the director of the Department of Finance to enter into a leases, subleases, and/or amendments at the Fraser Fieldhouse located at 3700 Fraser Street with the lessee, the Oakland Planning and Development Corporation, for the purpose of providing community programming, meetings, and event space to OPDC for a 5-year period at no cost to the city.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 647, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation. That moves us on to Human Resources Committee chaired by Councilman Charlin.
Bill 631, resolution providing that the city of Pittsburgh enter into a professional services agreement and/or contract with Industrial Organizational Solutions, Inc. for professional consulting services in connection with Fire Battalion Chief position job analysis, the development, administration, and scoring of written examinations and development, assessor selection, administration, and scoring of the oral board examinations, and providing for the payment of the cost thereof, cost not to exceed $71,005.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion?
I
Seeing,
just question. I just like to get a number of how many firefighters we have, how many firefighters, how many EMS workers, and how many police officers. I'd like to get some picture of what's happening in the bureaus.
Not enough.
Well, I know in some of them they're not enough, and some of them I'm wondering.
Well,
We could use them in different capacities. That's all.
any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 631, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation. That moves us on to Innovation, Performance, Asset Management, and Technology Committee chaired by Councilwoman Gross.
Bill 633, resolution amending Resolution 352 of 2023, which authorized an amended agreement with Workiva, Inc. to provide a subscription-based budget publishing software solution for 4 years by extending the term for 1 year and by increasing the approved amount by $52,043.81 for a new total cost not to exceed $221,344.14.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 633, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation. Bill 634.
Bill 634, resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of the Department of Innovation and Performance on behalf of the city of Pittsburgh to enter into a non-disclosure agreement at no cost to the city with Cabotics Fiber Systems Limited for the city to receive estimated pricing information from Cabotics for their innovative fiber optic installation system.
Motion to approve with discussion.
Second.
Thank you. I would like to bring up the people from IMP who we have in the office. Oh, there you are, Director. I'm sorry. I didn't recognize you in the back of the room, for example. I'm so sorry. If you could just state your name for us.
Certainly. Hello, Heidi Norman, Director of the Department of Innovation and Performance.
Thank you so much. So, Director, can you give us a sense not only of kind of like what the project is that we're trying to accomplish, the kind of infrastructure-wise, and then kind of what's happening here and why there's a request for a non-disclosure agreement.
Certainly. So in the world of fiber optic technology, there are a few methodologies for installing the fiber into our infrastructure. The classic ones that we know about and have used in the past include burying conduit, which are basically PVC tubes that we pull the fiber through. Another way is placing it on the pole, so aerial, very classic. We also, there's technology that they call micro trenching, where they cut really thin trench and bury the fiber optics down into a road. This is a technology that does something that we've never seen before, and that is they use robots to install the fiber technology in the wastewater system. So essentially, the sewer lines act as the conduit, which we already have and own, and the robots install the fiber inside. It's something that we're really intrigued by. It's an innovative technology that was developed. This company comes out of Ohio, and the gentleman who started the company is a multi-decade sewer systems engineer who worked with a variety of governments. Because we are unable to receive pricing information, we suspect, or we're being told by Cobotics, that it is far less expensive to install fiber using their systems because the conduit already exists and is buried than it would for any of the other methodologies. Okay, that sounds intriguing, but they're not going to give us the pricing information unless we sign a non-disclosure agreement. We've passed the non-disclosure agreement by the law department, and so they have been working with attorneys to help them understand what we can and cannot sign in terms of a non-disclosure. So at no cost to the city, if we sign this non-disclosure, they will reveal their actual pricing information to us.
So this is a response. You're pricing out how to install fiber optic cables.
We're exploring, yeah.
And you believe this is the only company doing it? Why?
This is the company that we know about and were introduced to through an organization called US Ignite. And it's the only company that I'm aware of that does this.
So we have used, there are many companies, including some Pittsburgh-based companies, that have developed and had sewer robots in the market for many years, and we've used them in Pittsburgh. Red Zone Robotics was created at NREC in Lawrenceville, and we didn't install the fiber optics, so that's what's different. The goal of the infrastructure project is different. But when we had collapsing sewers, like my first month on PWSA back in 2014, one of the giant sewers downtown had collapsed. It was like, well, how the hell did you let that collapse? I mean,
Right.
why is this an emergency? How did it collapse? It's because we hadn't been doing the camera work in the sewers, right? Because it used to be that you sent like a crew of guys, typically guys, with, some camera line, and it's not very cost efficient. And so there's now a whole industry of sewer robots that go
Correct.
down there with their own cameras.
Correct.
And so it cuts the cost, by 90%. So I'm not familiar with whether or not they're installing.
Yeah, they
et cetera. And then also the wisdom of installing fiber optics in sewers where some of our sewers are 100% full most of the time. Right, so we have sewer sheds, which you've been listening to me talk about now for 10 years, that are in our exceedance of the combined sewer overflow that falls into our rivers is really about 20% of our sewer sheds, which are each discrete systems, right? It's like branches on a tree. Like, you don't live in the same sewer shed I live in. Our pipes and toilets go to a different place in Highland Park than yours do, or even Morningside next over, or Stanton Heights or Lawrenceville. There's, not by neighborhood, but there's discrete systems that outfall. And like the A22 is one of the pipes that outfalls into the river, and is Bloomfield and Polish Hill, but all the way up into Shadyside and up into Chatham campus. And it's 100% full all the time. 1/10 of an inch of rainfall makes it overflow into the river.
Right, so this is not to contract with Cabotics in any way. It's not to move forward with an installation. This is an exploration that what other methodologies exist to install fiber, right? Because there's problems with all of them. The problem with conduit is it's extremely expensive, and we're going into austerity years, right? The problem with aerial is it doesn't last very long, right? The problem with micro trenching is with our roads, Department of Mobility and Infrastructure has a real problem with micro trenching because the fiber can get dug up when we're resurfacing, right? Those types of things. This is something that we are intrigued by, and we're trying to learn what it's all about. And I'm intrigued by their claims of low prices because, as you said, robots that have cameras on them, which this is a different technology, it's still a robot, but it's a different technology, that has proven to be really cost effective when we're trying to figure out what's going on in our wastewater systems. So all this is doing is, I asked them if they would share pricing with us, and they said, we absolutely will. You just need to sign a non-disclosure. That's it.
So it's not a response to an RFP?
No. It is an exploration of learning what this technology is about.
All right. And also, how are you learning about these technologies other than talking to one company?
So we are working through US Ignite, which is a national nonprofit organization that partners with government entities on their efforts for digital equity and broadband internet initiatives. And US Ignite is introducing us to a number of different companies to understand what our options might be as we look to close the digital divide in Pittsburgh. This is one of the companies that they introduce us to, and I'd like to know a little bit more.
And how did you get in touch with US Ignite, and how can we find out more about them? Because just because they're a nonprofit doesn't mean we can trust them, frankly.
Yeah, so US Ignite, we work with them today. We're a member organization, and they work with us and provide information.
You know who funds them, how long they've been around, are they entirely membership funded?
I'm happy to give you the information.
I would love that.
Absolutely.
I would love
Absolutely.
that. I'll stop there because I think other members also have questions. I appreciate your answers.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Wilson, followed by Councilwoman Killsmith.
Well, you said wires and sewer lines, and it caught my attention.
Crazy, right?
I wanted to I just had a couple questions about not so much what you'll find out in this in this non-disclosure conversation, but more so just how IMP is thinking about how we would ramp up to support or to provide an infrastructure that would support the draft in 2020. What is that? 2025. 2026.
2026.
So all over the place. So, just trying to understand what what will be required of us, because although I'm sure there'd be some, street repaving around certain areas. There's always something like the marathon comes through. There's always that, but then this one, there will be a lot of individuals that will be using devices, and so I'm just curious, and is this in preparation for that?
This is not in preparation for that. This is something entirely separate. It's just, this is more learning and research than anything else. In terms of the draft, I have not yet been approached by anyone to begin planning for the needs for 2026, but I am eager to learn more about what we're going to need to be able to do.
What do you think about that? Because, some people have mentioned to me that, you know, to be successful, like a city that's going to be successful with that would be a requirement to increase the, I don't know, I'm not an expert in the infrastructure for cellular or,
Yeah, so
you know,
your question
Wi-Fi.
is, what do I think of what
Whenever the
exactly?
draft comes in 2026, we'll be able to support that.
I think we're going to need to. Yeah, absolutely. I think we're going to need to work with private partners to expand the bandwidth and the capability of hundreds of thousands of people to connect to the internet remotely, right? Because they're all going to want to dial in and be online and doing all kinds of great things. So I think that's absolutely going to be necessary. I'm not, like I said, I haven't yet been approached by the folks that are organizing this effort.
Okay.
And I have not yet learned what funding might be available to support that.
Okay.
In terms of technology. So I'm sorry I don't have any more information.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
Do you know, in terms of this technology, do you know, like, I guess maybe you'll find out in these conversations, but once it exits the sewer line, would it exit at the catch basin?
Well, it's so interesting. So apparently, in addition to the robot that actually installs the fiber inside the sewer line, they also have a technology that helps to, it takes the fiber from the sewer line, and they have a connector so that it can go into a building. So the connector itself is also placed down in like a hub. So in the city, we have rainwater and things that go down into hubs. It's placed in a hub outside of a building, and that's where the line connects into a building. Like I said, I'm very new to this. I've never heard of it before, and I've never actually seen it operational.
Yeah, be curious.
So I'm collecting information and trying to learn more about it. It's something that sounds really interesting and unusual. I'm not yet clear if it's even viable.
Yeah. So it sounds like it would have to pierce the line at some.
I would think that at some point it's going to have to come out of the sewer and get to go into a building, right, to be hooked in.
That's what I was thinking. The catch
so
basin. Would
how exactly does that operate? I'm still learning more about it. Mm-hmm.
All right. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Councilwoman Kayla Smith.
Thank you. Director, I want to be so supportive of you because you come here and I always give you a hard time. I'm trying so hard to be supportive. But I just want to know, was there an RFP? I didn't hear you mention that. Was there an RFP?
No, this has nothing to do. We're not contracting with them for any services. This is strictly research.
And what if the non-disclosure says something in there about contracting? At a later, I'm just wondering if, because a non-disclosure, I'm not sure what it's going to say in there. And I also really want to know, before you go on to that one, why is this happening with us and not PWSA?
Because fiber optic. I'm just trying to learn about different methodologies of laying fiber. This is one that I'd never heard of. So the NDA is a non-disclosure from Cabotics that they want us to sign so that we are not sharing their proprietary pricing information. Their claim is that this is far less expensive than other methods of installation, but I have no way to verify that.
Yeah. Well,
and
I think
way
that should be up to them to verify to us that because I'm concerned that they're going to end up with a sole source contract, and this is just laying the groundwork for that. And I also don't feel comfortable not knowing. I never like voting for something I don't know. So I would like to continue. I'll abstain today, but I'd like to continue to get information. I just told Bobby Charter, my brother was the dean at Carnegie Mellon for computer science and engineering. I'm lucky I can turn my computer on. So I think I'm going to call him. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Coghill, followed by Councilman Charlin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Heidi, thank you for being here. The non-disclosure contract is simply an agreement between us and Cabotics that says we are not to provide that information, whatever that cost estimate is. And once we get that, then we will proceed to find out what all it entails. Right. We're not going to go into look into it just yet as far as what it entails, but we're going to get the price.
Let me be clear.
Okay.
It's not a quote.
Right.
It's not a price estimate. Has nothing to do with any of that. It is, they're making a claim about how much their systems cost, their services, and I'm asking, show me your actual pricing sheet. So whether it's Amsterdam in the Netherlands or somewhere in Namibia or it's Arizona, what does your pricing look like? Because I don't have anything to go on other than them saying this costs less.
Right.
I'm like, okay.
Right.
So all it is whatever your pricing is, however you price these things for anybody in the universe, please show that to me. And they're saying, okay, but I don't want you putting it on the web. I don't want you sharing this with others.
Right, right. So,
That's it.
so it will not be a cost estimate for Pittsburgh.
Correct.
But
It
it will
is
be a
not.
comparison as to what they've done in other cities and like, show us the pudding, basically, right?
Correct.
Show us how much it saves. And,
Right.
and the advantages or disadvantages to it. You know, to me, from, my point of view, it sounds like a great idea. Whoever this man is in Ohio or this company, to put the fiber optics through the tunnels, just sounds like it's common sense. We don't have to dig. We don't have to, a safety issue, I would think, for robots to do it. That's going to be, we're not crawling through the sewers, so robots actually install this.
Right. Yeah,
Until,
PWSA would really have to decide if they would
well, you're right. You would have to
allow
coordinate
it,
with them, of
right?
course. Yes. Yeah. You're just getting
All I'm trying to figure out is I've got 3 other ways that I know about
Right,
and can
right.
price out and have a handle on how it works.
Right.
This is something that is, it sounds really innovative. It sounds super interesting. I don't know if it's even a viable
I
option.
agree.
The pricing is just one more piece of that
Sure.
puzzle where I'm trying to do
Sure,
research.
you're in an infancy stage. You just need permission to say, yeah, we're going to sign that non-disclosure, so we're not going to divulge your pricing to the rest of the world.
Right.
I think it's well worth looking into. It really sounds like a great idea to get these fiber optics. Now, until I hear Councilwoman Gross say, it filled the capacity, I don't know if that would affect the actual. Is it just, it's like size of an electrical wire? Do you know, fiber optics? Like, what would they be putting through that sewer system?
So usually it contains about 128 strands of
Yeah,
glass,
right.
and so they're really small
Right.
cables.
Yeah, so
And
you put it on the top and you hope it doesn't flood. But even if it floods, I would think they're designed to be waterproof if you're putting them through the sewers, right?
I have seen a video of
Okay.
how it
Right,
works,
right,
and
right.
essentially what this robot does, it's actually super interesting, and you're pretty much on point. The robot holds the fiber up to the top of the pipe, and then it has another arm that spins around and essentially lines the inside of the sewer line, and the fiber sits between the pipe and the liner. Right? So they have to go through, they have to clean the pipe for obvious reasons, and then they hold this wire up and it lines the pipe, and that's how the fiber is attached. Now, does it hold up under high pressure situations with a crumbling line, anything like that? Like, I don't know the answers to that. Again, I'm still trying to do my research to even learn more about the technology.
I really feel it's worth exploring. I'm glad you're exploring it. I could see already a cost savings in the way of, first of all, if you're going up top with the wires, infrastructure is already in place here,
Right.
So the avenues are already there. We're not digging trenches across roads. We're not going on private property. We're going through our sewer system. So I hope it pans out. I really am interested in seeing more about it myself. So, okay, you had mentioned we have membership with US Ignite. They're the nonprofit. Do we pay a membership fee?
We do pay a membership fee. I'd have to look at what the annual fee is, but it's very low. It's very inexpensive, yes.
Good. And they're the ones that turned you on to this company?
Yes.
Good. I believe when you say about where it comes out, you just put a T on it, just like a water line, or, comes through the ground and into the buildings or wherever it needs to go. So that seems, but I look forward to, I know you're in an infancy stages. Yeah. So, it seems very innovative to me. It's common sense, practical, but at the same time,
It seems like a really interesting innovation that could prove to be a serious entry into the market in terms of installation of these kinds of fiber lines.
It seems like a
I
simple,
don't think it's
practical idea.
used
Right.
terribly much yet because it's
Sure.
still so young.
Right. I'm sure it's expensive too, but we'll see.
We shall see.
Right.
I hope to learn more about that.
Okay, following up on Councilman Wilson's question about the draft, I'm on the SEA board. I'm very involved, or was very involved in the whole process, and it's going to be beautiful. We don't really quite know exactly how it's going to be laid out, but Point Park just may be flooded with people, right? Point State Park, right? Are we wired up to handle a worldwide production? I mean, is that even?
I don't even know what that means yet.
I don't either.
Right, so there's, that's a big, broad question.
Yes.
Point State Park is a state park.
Sure. That's another thing, right?
So,
Might not be our problem.
so I am eager to learn more about what will be required of the city versus the county versus anyone else, and to partner with those organizations that are going to help us create an amazing event that's really successful for Pittsburgh.
Sure is economic boom for
Yes.
us too. So it's
Precisely.
really great. Right. Okay. No, I fully support you looking into this. I think it's a great idea just to dig in deeper.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Charlin.
So I'm really excited about this idea. Personally, I hate overhead wires. And so I think that this could be very cool. So I'm really glad that you're looking into this. It seems like a pretty great innovative idea. Do you know, would this company just be doing fiber optics, or would they also be looking at is there a way to expand to other types of wiring?
Oh, I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I mean, literally every time I talk to Duquesne Light, I'm like, how about we bury some wires? And it's very expensive.
Keep Pittsburgh beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, it really is. And you can, when you visit other cities and even parts of this city, when you bury the wires, you really change kind of the feel of the neighborhood. So I would be interested to see what else this can expand to, because I understand how expensive all the other technologies can be in laying conduit, and how challenging that can be with construction. This seems like a very cool idea. I'm curious though, the NDA that you're asking for authorization to sign, is it, I mean, are we literally just talking about an NDA for a price sheet?
Yes.
There's
That's
no other,
No.
we're not learning more about the technology. It is just.
No. Because learning about the technology, that's not proprietary.
Right.
When I started questioning their claims about prices, that's when they were like, well, they were very hesitant to share it with me. And so I just asked, I was just like, well, I don't know how can you prove to me what you're saying? And they said, well, if you're willing to send a non-disclosure so that you're not publishing our, how we go about creating pricing, we will share this with you. So
Cool.
That's what it's for.
And then the only other question I have is that, as we talk about the PWSA, essentially acquiring the infrastructure of PWSA that currently we own, I imagine that this is going to have to become a multi-party agreement if we were to pursue something like this.
If we were to pursue oh, absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Of course.
Okay. That's all for me. I'm excited to find out what you find out.
And I will ask them, do they do things other than fiber?
Yeah.
Why not?
Cool.
Right?
Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any further comments or discussion? Second round, Councilman
Just real quick,
Cochran.
I was actually going to tell you to ask a question while you were at it. So, but no, the processes, the mechanical process as to how they do this work. Do you know if this company has a patent on that, or is it?
I did not ask
Okay.
that.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
I'm just curious as to, because if they do, they're the only ones that can do it. So.
Yeah, I didn't ask.
Okay. Good enough. Thanks.
Thank you. Second round, Councilwoman Cale Smith.
I'm just curious, is it a union company? Do you know?
I did not ask.
Okay, I'm just curious. I'm going to vote for it today because after hearing all the conversation, I feel a little bit more comfortable.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for explaining so well. Thank you.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 634, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director.
Bill 635.
Bill 635, Resolution amending Resolution 33 of 2022, authorizing the mayor and the Director of Innovation and Performance on behalf of the City of Pittsburgh to enter into an agreement or agreements and amendments thereto with CIS, Center for Internet Security, for Albert MD monitoring application, which predicts malicious activity on the city network by monitoring, alerting, and analyzing information gathered by sensors by increasing the approved amount by $41,400 for an amended total cost not to exceed $97,500 over 8 years.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Discussion?
Yes.
Councilman Sharlin?
Director, I think I'm going to call you back up to the table if that's okay.
You got it way too easy.
So I very much know that, let's see, it was probably in 2019, we really started having discussions that we were becoming incredibly vulnerable as a city for, malware and internet attacks and that sort of thing. I'm curious what this application does, and if you can kind of update us on where we are in terms of how strong our security network is to make sure that we're not paying some of those ransomware attack claims that I see other cities and authorities have to pay.
Yeah, your concerns are very valid. Right. So it is true that the city back in 2019 felt that it was fairly vulnerable, that our risks were high. The good news is in 2020 we created a new position, Chief Information Security Officer, which Sylvia Harris has held since that time. In terms of giving you an overview of where we are today, for security reasons, I'm not going to do that publicly.
Sure.
However, we do have members of council who are on the Technology Leadership Council's Cybersecurity Governance Committee, and Sylvia Harris would also be happy to give you, any of you, an overview of where we are on cybersecurity generally. This particular component is a device that's offered by the Federal Center for Internet Security, and at very low cost to us, it is a device that allows us to monitor activity on our network for malicious actors who may be present in our network. You may know from various newspaper articles, and particularly from the most recent attack, which that I know of on a major city, which is Cleveland, that closed their city hall for a week, that many times actors are inside the house for a while before they are detected. This is a device that actually does the monitoring and looks for activity that would indicate someone is inside of our network that we do not want there. So that is precisely what this is designed to do, and it is something that is a requirement for us to maintain our cybersecurity status.
When you say requirement, you mean
we have to have
not
it.
a legal requirement, but
right. It is part of our
non-negotiable.
part of our risk mitigation efforts. This is one brick in the wall, and it's a very important one.
No, that's helpful to know. That's really all the questions I have. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 635, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Affirmative recommendation.
Thank you again.
636.
Bill 636, resolution authorizing the mayor and the Director of Human Resources and Civil Service to enter into a professional services agreement and/or contract with NeoGov for the continual maintenance of software for HR, workforce management, applicant tracking, and civil service testing, and providing for the payment of the cost thereof, cost not to exceed
Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 636, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation, Bill 637.
Bill 637, resolution authorizing the mayor and the Director of Public Safety and the Director of Innovation and Performance to enter into a professional services agreement or agreements with Locality Media, Inc., doing business as First Due for professional services relating to purchase and implementation of new firehouse management and administrative support software for a total cost not to exceed $501,546.50.
Motion to approve, brief discussion.
Second.
I just wanted to let council members know that the software that fire is using right now is crashing every day. But this has been researched and going on for a couple of years and out to bid, and everybody's really happy with the decision. It's going to do not only the scheduling, but also inventory maintenance, which we really need, other kind of facility management. So it's good timing.
Any further discussion?
Real quickly, Councilwoman Gross, maybe you can answer this. What exactly does this? You're saying the software crashes every day. What exactly does the software do?
Sure.
Is it
So scheduling, for example, like who's where, when, and the shift work, but also, as far as I understand, kind of like, I don't think it's really the communications, but every other kind of management thing. So this is adding a capacity for inventory management too. So all of the equipment, we've seen things over the years like air tanks, masks, gear for the fire trucks, all those kinds of things. There's a really important safety element for employees to managing the equipment that they're using. And that's about as much as I know. So if you want any more than that, I'm going to have to call someone to the table.
Yeah, I think I would like to learn a little bit more about that. I think someone from fires
Who
here.
do we have? Yeah, thanks.
Got a whole gang.
Thank you all. So take your seats and introduce yourselves with your titles for the record. Councilman Charlene will ask some questions.
I'm Gwendolyn Moore, Assistant Director of Business Technology with IMP, and I manage the senior managers who currently support the Firehouse application, and we're in support of them migrating over to the new system.
Matt Davis, the Assistant Chief of the Bureau of Fire.
Charles Showers, Manager of Personnel and Finance for Public Safety.
Thank you. I'll let Councilman Charlene.
Yeah, I'm curious what this software does, what it's supposed to do, and can you kind of tell us about what it's not, or what our current contract is not doing?
It's not so much what our current contract is not doing. We are using a 30-year-old reporting software right now. So the biggest thing that happens when it crashes is we can't even keep up with our incident reports. So,
like after a fire
or any incident.
Wow.
So we could be weeks, months behind in getting reports completed for general knowledge, for if they're needed for insurances, for anything, because of the way it crashes. Because usually when it crashes now, it takes extensive work and rehab to get it back to working order. So that's probably the biggest challenge. Second is payroll management. Everybody wants paid, and when it crashes, we can't maneuver the board, and we have to figure out ways to make sure that's completed every week. So
how long has it been crashing for?
Yeah, many
Really?
years. Yeah.
Wow. Well, this is obviously something that we need then.
Absolutely,
You know,
absolutely. And then it's going to improve processes. It's going to improve our the way we do things, because we're going to provide data. It's gonna allow us to make that a lot easier to produce reports and produce results for everybody that needs them as well. So,
if I may, why have we not updated this software? If it's been crashing for years, why did we wait until?
So I've only been here about a year, but previously, I guess they attempted with another software, and there was too many issues with that, and it wasn't able to be implemented. And we finally nailed down a program that would work successfully for us. So.
And it is a result of a request for proposal went up to a competitive bid process and that took a while also.
I mean, I guess this is just a general knowledge thing and not really fire specific, but what other kind of softwares exist within the city right now that are creating such hurdles like this that we need to upgrade?
Excuse me, that's a great question. How long do you have? As you
Yeah.
know, for many years, we were in financial oversight, and we were not able to invest in new technologies, and that's why we're coming to you so often now with requests for additional funding to support upgrading and migrating away from premise-based systems into the SaaS-based systems and systems that can provide the data required to make data-driven government decisions.
I mean, I think that is a fantastic use and what I believe to be the optimal use of the ARPA dollars in this once-in-a-generation investment is upgrading these systems that have been neglected and we haven't been able to upgrade because of the years of austerity, using this time, well, we're not quite in austerity yet, but preparing for, what are the value adds that we can make right now. And so I'm happy to support this, and I hope that, you know, we're able to make those other upgrades that are required to provide the most basic functions like supporting our firefighters.
Thank you.
That's all for me. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 637, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair,
Thanks, Gwendolyn.
Thank you.
I have to step away for a meeting at noon. I want to register I votes for the remaining bills. And just also remind members that at 2 o'clock, we have the briefing with the Urban Policy Center on corporate purchasing of homes. So,
Thank you very much.
I believe here in Chambers.
Yes.
Thank you very much. That moves us on to Intergovernmental and Educational Affairs Committee, chaired by Councilman Mosley.
Bill 638, Resolution amending Resolution 15-198-375 of 2024, which authorized a cooperation agreement or agreements with the City of Pittsburgh Equipment Leasing Authority for the purchase and leasing of vehicles, equipment and accessories, equipment support infrastructure, and professional services in fiscal year 2024 by increasing the authorized amount by $29,870 to a new total of $14,525,666.50 for additional items to be added to the plan.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 638, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Affirmative recommendation.
Bill 639, Resolution further amending Resolution number 42 of 2019, entitled Resolution Authorizing the Mayor and the Director of the Department of Public Works to enter into a professional services agreement between the City of Pittsburgh and AE7 Pittsburgh LLC for architectural and engineering design services for the multi-story office build-out at 412, formerly 420, Boulevard of the Allies, by increasing the amount of the professional services agreement with AE7 by $142,740.31 from $432,000 to $574,740.31.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 639, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Affirmative- One no. Affirmative recommendation. Bill 640.
Bill 640, Resolution Authorizing the Mayor and the Director of the Department of Public
more
Works to
money on
enter into an
412.
agreements
lights
and/or
aren't in there yet.
amendments
I'm
with
gonna
the
vote no on that,
Pittsburgh
too.
Water and
half
Sewer
empty
Authority
still.
for the purpose of rehabilitating the sewer system at the city's Frick Park underneath the Fern Hollow Bridge at no cost to the city.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none,
Not on this bill, but on the previous bill. I want to register a no vote. I'm sorry.
thank you.
Thank you.
Any discussion on Bill 640? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 640, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation. We have reached the end of our agenda. We have some meeting announcements. This afternoon at 2 p.m., Council will hold a conference with the University Center for Social and Urban Research on corporate purchases of single-family homes. Next week, Council will hold the regular and standing committees meeting on Tuesday, July 16th and Wednesday, July 17th at 10 a.m., respectively. Registration ends at 9 a.m. the morning of each meeting. To register to speak at these council meetings, please fill out the sign-up form in its entirety on the council meeting webpage. You may also register by calling the city clerk's office at 412-255-2138. Is there anything from members?
Yes, Madam Chair. I've been advised from our solicitor here about Bill 642, and I would like to make a motion to recommit that bill. It is a salary increase which needs to be held for a public hearing, and I think procedurally I need to call for the motion first.
Motion to reconsider?
Motion to reconsider.
Second.
And then I would like to
That
call
has to
up
be for the
our solicitor.
Yeah, all those in favor of
sorry.
motion to reconsider, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Floor is yours.
Thank you for keeping me on track.
Good afternoon.
Introduce yourself.
Daniel Friedson, solicitor for City Council. So, not trying to complicate things and not trying to delay anyone's payday. I just want to measure twice and cut once so it doesn't, take us by surprise later. But I thought I'd start with just, in the Home Rule Charter, the effect of adopting the budget under 506 is relation to both the capital and operating budget. It's an appropriation or setting apart of funds from the general resources for specific purposes set forth in the budget. So if you take it from there, we've adopted this budget. The Home Rule Charter discusses our operating budget in 502 of the comments. It says, an operating budget is to provide for salaries, supplies, short-lived equipment, debt amortization, etc. Then it goes further to describe the operating budget in 503, which is to list in detail proposed expenditures for each agency of city government, and to state specific activities to be carried out by these proposed expenditures. It goes on to list examples like number of miles of streets to be swept, number of fire prevention inspections to be made, miles of patrolled police, number of playgrounds to be in use, etc. So then that takes us to 319, which says there's, in the comments again, the public is to be provided published notice and a hearing on proposed legislation concerning certain very important policy questions listed in this section, and as you well noted, listed in that section is salaries. It's the first one. And so in an effort to just be totally clear and consistent with this, I'm going to recommend that you do a public hearing for the salaries, because in this particular instance, and I like the salary coded account to salary coded account, so we're not reopening the budget under 507 of the Home Rule Charter, but it's still a salary. So yeah, that's going to be the recommendation. I guess I understand the need to have some kind of mechanism where you don't publish everybody's salaries before you enter into a collective bargaining agreement. And so, one way to do that would be put it into the general resources fund so it's not committed to an agency for salaries. So the kerfuffle here, if you will, is that these are salaries that were committed to the Department of Human Resources and Civil Service. So another way to do this in the future, if they don't want to have a public hearing, is they could commit salaries, uncommitted salaries, if you will, to the specific departments that they're looking to negotiate with. And in this case, it goes from one department into several different departments. And so in terms of each agency of the city, this is very different. It's not apples to apples. It's one apple to 5 oranges, if you will. So recommending the public hearing be held based on the Home Rule Charter that I just read to you.
Thank you. Then I guess my motion would be a motion to hold for public hearing.
Would you like to allow other members to ask questions?
Yeah. Thank you for keeping me on track here. I really appreciate that. I'm not trying
Looks
to.
like there's some other questions from council
Okay.
members. I have Councilperson Warwick, Councilwoman Gross, Councilwoman Warwick.
So are you, did we have a
Your
public
mic's off.
hearing? Oh, sorry. Did we have a public hearing for the other, after the other contract negotiations about the salary
did.
increases?
We did. So this would be consistent with council precedent.
Councilwoman Gross?
I am sitting here trying to recall the kinds of, we sometimes do operating budget changes
Yes.
without
Without a public
a
hearing.
public hearing. And if I think I'm following you, and your contention is that it's because it's changing like the total salaries allocated to human resources is being decreased and the total salary amounts to the fire or public safety department is being increased.
Yeah, public
And
safety.
that
I'm sorry.
somehow is fundamentally different.
Yes, it's because it's under the Home Rule Charter, the operating budget's supposed to be a little bit more specific.
I was also recalling that, back in 2013, the budgets were very not specific. We didn't have the technical capacity. And for, I think, probably 100 years before that, maybe, well, I don't know how many years we have published budgets for the city. Maybe it's more than 100 years, right? It was kind of like salaries, and then there was a number. I'm not even sure if it was broken down. No matter how far back you go, it was broken down by departments. But we only should be concerned with back to the 1970s, which is the Home Rule Charter, right? And so that specifies that the budget that we have a public hearing on in December before we pass it has to have the salaries for the city differentiated by department. Does the Home Rule Charter require that the salary budget be differentiated by department
If you don't want to have a public
or
hearing.
be department specific?
Yeah, I mean, the
When
319
we pass a budget in December, is it hypothetically possible, not that we want to pass a budget that's like, here are the salaries for the city and not broken down by department?
You'd have to have a public hearing.
Well, we would. In December, though, could we have passed, or could we in 2024, pass a budget for 2025 that says, here's just the total salaries for the city of Pittsburgh without it being differentiated by department? Or does the Home Rule Charter require us, that you're reading, does it require us to publish one specifically separately for the Human Resources Department, specifically separately for the Department of Law? Does the Home Rule Charter require that?
It doesn't require that.
Then I kind of feel like it's moot. I mean, we're not increasing the total salary budget for the city in this bill. The salary budget for the city has not changed.
If I may,
You go to law school.
what it does say though, which kind of, I see where you're getting at,
Yeah.
but the problem is
We're fundamentally kind of not changing. We've increasingly over time, for transparency and accountability and public involvement in the budget, broken and because of the capacity of softwares and the existence of the internet, published our budget in finer and finer grain, which is great. But I'm not sure that still requires us to have a public hearing for the change.
First of all, council can direct the form of the operating budget. But to the extent that the Home Rule Charter does require a line item budget, it does. It requires a line item budget that contains sufficient information on intended accomplishments to allow adequate appraisal of the work for each unit of government. So it comes back to that each unit of government
For accomplishments.
for each fiscal year.
Not salaries.
Well, but yes, that is true. However, you
All
have
right,
to read it all
I
together.
think I've raised my issue. I'm not sure where I'm going with this, so I'm going to stop it there. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
If I may just make
It's
one
my
point of
understanding that it's at the discretion of council, that this is an interpretation, and it's at the full discretion of council.
Yes, that is right. Yeah, I would say, 507 allows you to transfer funds from at any time. There's nothing in the Home Rule Charter that says that then negates the requirements of a public hearing in 319. But I also agree with Councilwoman Strasburger that this ultimately is council's decision. But the public, however, does have a right to have a hearing when it comes to matters of salary or the appropriation and budget. So that's why I'm recommending that you do it now.
Thank you. Councilwoman Cale Smith for first round.
I'm just going to say that I'm grateful for your legal opinion because you are the legal expert here, not at the table, not all of us. And I will say that you do have your law degree. So thank you for your opinion. But I also want to say that I never heard so much comments about giving the public an opportunity to have some say. I mean, to me, it's let the public come say what they want to say. In the end, it's still going to be council's decision, and council's still going to do what they want to do.
Correct.
So I just don't understand all the tension and all the pushback for it. I mean, I missed the conversation before, so maybe I missed something before this.
There's probably a legitimate concern on the timing and that, people want to get this passed so that the employees can get their salaries paid as quickly as possible. And that makes sense. However, it's a salary.
Then we
Public
should have
hearings
done this
required
earlier.
under the Home Rule Charter.
Well, I would just say then we should make sure that we're doing things in a timely fashion. Not negate the responsibility to the public, the
Correct.
public process.
Yeah, there's,
But I mean, I hear people. I mean,
Any-
it's up to council. 5 members want to not have a hearing, it's up to council.
Any further for first round? Second round, Councilwoman Warwick, Councilperson Warwick.
Are there rules, I mean, what kind of a delay, because we're looking at recess, again, I don't want to slow down.
I think it's 10 days that we have to give the public notice before the hearing. Let me just double check. So no final action till a public hearing held not less than 10 days following the public notice published in a newspaper, circulated generally in the city. So
So we probably wouldn't get this voted on until,
It looks like there could be if it were on the 10th, on the 11th day, then there could be standing committee the 24th, final action on the 30th.
And retroactive pay, of course, is always on the table. So if their agreement says that their pay is supposed to start July 1st and we don't get the whole process done per the Home Rule Charter until August 31st, they still get back pay from the date of their agreement. So that they will be made whole in the event delay somehow. I don't know what the agreement says, so I don't know what the pay date is, but I'm just saying they're entitled to their money from the date it says in the agreement, not based on when we get our process finished.
Any further for second round? Councilman Charlin,
Motion to hold for public hearing?
is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of hold for public hearing for Bill 642, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Abstentions? Noes? Bill will be held for a public hearing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
We are at the end of our meeting, so can I please get a motion to approve the minutes and adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
We are adjourned.